I'm James Fratzke, and this is Leaders. There's this quote I really love by Sir Isaac Newton. It goes like this: "If I've seen further than others, it's by standing upon the shoulders of giants." So Leaders is an opportunity for you and I to stand on the shoulders of giants and learn from their journey. On each episode, I'll interview a proven leader, CEO, entrepreneur, or founder and unpack their story of success. On this episode, I'll be talking with the CEO behind my favorite cup of coffee, Philz Coffee. No, his name is not Phil, it's actually Jacob, and he's the son of, you guessed it, Phil. My love for Phil started when I tasted their iced mint mojito in San Francisco. There's just something special about the way they do business. From its humble beginnings in the Bay Area, Philz has grown from one store to over 40, catching the eye of venture capitalists and raising over $75 million to help propel their growth. What I learned from Jacob is that it doesn't matter if it's a cup of coffee or a new whiz-bang technology, curiosity and attention to detail go a long way. But don't take it from me. Jacob, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for being here. You are the CEO of Philz Coffee, which is my favorite cup of coffee. The iced mint mojito is to die for.
I agree.
Let me start with this. At 18, your dad gave you the opportunity to run the business. Now you've grown it into 40 plus locations and you've raised about $75 million in VC funding. In an interview one time, you said that you didn't know anything, so everything was hard and easy at the same time. What did you mean by that? And what were some of those early lessons that you learned?
Yeah, well, I'm generally curious and I like to ask a lot of questions. And I grew up young, working near my dad. I learned the way to do business and I understood it at a young age. It came pretty natural to me because of that experience. Working with people, understanding numbers, do good business in the right way was something I learned at a young age. So that combined with just being curious and asking a lot of questions allowed me to learn in an effective way. And whenever I came across somebody who I thought had good knowledge in an area that I wanted to learn more about, I wouldn't be shy to talk to them and ask them a lot of questions so I could learn. But I wouldn't immediately accept what they told me. I had always filtered it through my own thoughts and common sense. And most of the times it lined up, but sometimes I would challenge what someone would tell me because I thought a little bit differently. You know, I think in business and in life, one of the best traits is to be a constant learner. No matter your role or title, you should always be learning and you should always be asking questions. And I love challenging the status quo and asking why is it done that way? You know, and if you just go back to the root principle of any concept or thing and you just peel back the onion, you begin to see things in a new light.
So you mentioned being curious and having these curiosity conversations with people that had experience in things that were interesting to you or that you wanted to learn more about. Would you categorize those as mentors, or were these more of just kind of casual conversations?
Yeah, I guess you can, it depends how you define mentors. It was much more casual than that. There's just people I'd see regularly who I'd talk to, but learning could come from anywhere and anyone. It's all about the questions and it's all about the interest and the conversation. So, if you're present in a conversation and you're talking with somebody who knows about a topic that you don't know, you can learn a lot from them and as they can from you. It's really about learning and less about having a mentor or an advisor. But I definitely had a lot of relationships with people, but it was always very casual. Until I grew in my career a little bit more, I formalized a few relationships a little bit more. And, met monthly or bi-monthly with some of the folks that I admired a lot to help me learn and grow.
Speaking of mentors, I assume your dad, Phil, who is the Phil in Philz Coffee, was a mentor to you. That balance between father and mentor and founder of a company can be a little bit difficult, but can you tell us a little bit about that dynamic between the two of you?
Yeah, I learned the most from him. He is an amazing person with some of the best business and people skills that I've come across. And it's very authentic, and that's the key. I wouldn't necessarily sit and have a ton of conversations with my dad every day because we'd be working side by side. So again, the learning was very organic, natural, and casual. And sometimes you can't beat just working side by side and observing and seeing and watching. So a lot of the learnings with my dad were just working with him side by side versus sitting at a table with a cup of coffee and talking about things. That was really effective because it improved the efficiency. Like I learned at a much rapid rate because instead of hearing words, I saw things. And when you see things, you get a clearer picture of what it looks like in real life. Then you can make your own judgment on how to do it yourself.
You said in an interview one time that your job as CEO is really to uphold your dad's values, those values that he taught you and he taught you about business. What are some of those values that are crucial to Phil's success today?
Yeah, I mean, I think being a good person, doing the right thing, being kind, treating people not like employees or numbers or customers, but just people. Really giving them an experience that feels warm, welcoming, and is an authentic, no matter how they look, where they come from, what they wear. We really wanted to celebrate the human spirit and diversity, and making sure that hospitality is at the core of our culture. So just making sure everybody that came in felt welcome and everybody left with a better day and a smile was extremely important to us. We were really obsessed about that. Call that value just being customer focused or people focused. That's one. Another one I'd say is just making progress. This ties back to learning a little bit, but just continuously making progress and not being stagnant. Always challenging the status quo and finding ways to do things a little bit better, particularly the things that we're already good at, versus trying to marginally improve the things that we're not as good at. This doesn't mean we ignore those opportunities, but sometimes in life, people are, instead of just focusing on elevating your strengths to massive strengths, you spend more time on, if you spend time on the things that you're not as good at and you try to get great at those, you might be missing the opportunity to give value in the world of the things you're already great at.
Now, one of the things that I value about Philz Coffee, and I'm talking about now specifically the coffee, is that you guys work on one cup at a time. And you try to perfect and customize that cup for the individual customers. I think that's a great metaphor, not only for business, like how do you perfect that product to the best of your ability, but it's also kind of a metaphor for life. Like, what are those little tweaks that you can do to make yourself the perfect cup of coffee? So in that analogy, what are those tweaks, what are those habits or those tactics that you have that make you successful every day? Can you think of maybe 2 to 3 things that you do every day that help improve your cup of coffee metaphorically?
Yeah, great question. First off, back to that, I think that we believe philosophically that the best cup of coffee is the one that comes to your taste, but less true for everything in this world. The best is the one that comes to your taste. So, for me, what I like to do is I haven't been reading books as much, but reading really good articles. There's one site in particular that I subscribe to and really enjoy reading every week. It's called Farnham Street, Farnam Street. So that's a really good read. I've been listening to podcasts. I kind of mix it up. There's not really one I love. It just depends on the subject. It ranges from science to philosophy to math to business to health. I think when I go out and visit stores, and I visit stores regularly, multiple times a week, and try to hit 10 stores a week at least, just learning from the team and the customers and seeing people. And that's when I feel most alive.
We've talked a lot about learning, and your history is interesting in a sense, and I think it's kind of the new normal. You started going to community college. You decided to drop out. In your words, they were forcing you to learn stuff that wasn't interesting from people that weren't that interesting. But it seems to have worked out well for you. So if there was a young entrepreneur that came to you and said, hey, Jacob, I'm thinking about going to school, but I have this entrepreneurial drive. Like, what do I do? What would be your advice to them?
I have a weakness, which is obsessiveness. So like I am hyper focused. Like I get obsessed about something. So at this point in my life, I'm obsessed about Philz and making it a success, and I won't give up. So it's just about doing everything you can. you got to be determined. You got to have perseverance. You're going to suffer a lot of pain. There's going to be really hard times. There's going to be really good times, but it's hard, and it only gets harder as you grow the company. But it's also more exciting, and in some ways, it gets easier as you start putting together the right team. So the job changes over time, but you have to, I think you have to be super focused. And so many people give up too quick or spend their time, circling around the thing they should be working on, but don't necessarily just go for it. In the early days of anyone's career, it's important to sometimes ignore what people might say, or have just a little bit of ignorance, a healthy amount of ignorance, just to get you into that inner circle of what you're most passionate about. Because otherwise, everyone's going to be too rational and pragmatic and, talk you out of it. And then the problem with school is it just doesn't make sense to me. It's so few people really know what they want to do at that stage in life. And you're forced to choose a topic you spend so much time on, and then you feel forced to stay in that field, and that might not be it. So I think school has to be viewed a little bit differently, and I think learning has to be about experiences. School wasn't for me. I think everybody's a little bit different.
So you've talked a lot about learning, and at Philz Coffee, you guys actually have a program for your team members called Philz University, but it doesn't seem like you necessarily buy into school. So is this encouraging team members to go to school? How does it tie into their education?
I think the name should be changed from school to learning. Or from university to learning, because school isn't about learning. Learning is about learning, and learning comes from many different forms and ways. So I think whatever you call it, it's not important. What matters is what it is. And Philz University is a group of great people who are passionate about educating the people that join Philz to be their best in a multitude of ways, both mechanically and figuring out how to do the job that needs to be done. But more importantly, and the thing we're more excited about, is developmental learning experiences, like how to be a leader, how to coach, how to give feedback, business acumen, and health and wellness. Just a multitude of different learning experiences that are available to all of our team members. So that's the thing we're really excited about building, and in the early days of it.
I love that. Your dad's name is Phil. My dad's name is Scott.
Okay.
But when he used to drive us, he used to drive us to school in the morning, and he used to tell us, like, I don't care if you get an A or a C. I want you to learn something today. And so that's kind of a great perspective that you have. It doesn't really matter the performance from a school, like a typical, what culture would assign as like you pass or fail. It's what did you learn? So I love that little tweak. Let's talk about feedback. You've talked about in the past how feedback inside your company has been very crucial to its success, and you welcome feedback from all levels. You encourage all levels to give feedback, whether you're a barista or you're one of the chief officers in the company. Tell us a little bit about that principle.
It's hard, much harder than it's easy to talk about feedback, but it's real hard to enact in real life, because you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but you kind of have to do it in order to help people get better. And I think feedback is just, you could kind of look at it as food that helps you grow muscles, right? Like just helps you grow skills. You won't get full off of feedback, right? So like the more feedback that you get, I think the better. Versus it has to come from a good place. It has to be authentic. And one of our values is about keeping it real and being authentic. So if something was done bad, it should be clearly said that it was done bad and why, and what it could be, what could be done to make it better, but always in a way that doesn't make the person feel like you're giving up on them. I think that's really important. And then same thing for positive feedback. I think that it's more important to give positive recognition than it is negative, because oftentimes the most effective way to promote more of the behaviors that you want and to get better is just acknowledging specifically when someone does something that you think was awesome, and they're going to keep doing it. And the more you recognize them on the things you love about them, that's just going to overtake the way they work versus focusing on the one or two things that they may not be doing well. So I think it's all a balance, but I think 75 should be positive recognition, 25 should be constructive feedback. I don't mean to put a number on it, but just to give a little bit of a concrete guidance on how to approach these things.
No, I think it makes sense to put a number on it, like 75, 25, because once you have a process, then you can repeat that over time. I had a leader, a mentor of mine once tell me, the second I stop giving you feedback is the second you should be worried because I don't care about you anymore, right?
That's great. I tell leaders that all the time. I think that's awesome advice.
Let's talk about, though, like for you as the CEO getting feedback, does your ego ever come into play? How do you kind of check that at the door and just kind of be open to maybe feedback that's coming your way?
So feedback, getting feedback sometimes for me could be hard depending on what it is, because I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I take losses pretty hard. I'm still learning how to cope better with tough feedback. In the moment, I'm always appreciative and I take it in, but what will happen is I'll just muse over it for the next few days and, try and learn from it and ask myself, what can I do to get better? So I think that's really important, but it's hard. I think like baseball players probably have a pretty stressful job, because if they have a pretty bad game, then, it's going to be rough for them. And you have to wait till the next game to see if you could make it up. So I think it's hard, and it should be actually for if you're not a little bit disappointed about it and you're like, shoot, that doesn't feel good, and then maybe you're not caring enough about that topic.
Let me shift gears a little bit to your personal life. It seems as if from the outside looking in that you said it yourself, you're obsessed with Philz Coffee. Is there a such thing as work-life balance for you right now, or is it Philz is the balance and you get so much positive energy from that some of the other pieces like a social life and things like that don't matter as much?
Both are true, but I wouldn't say social life doesn't matter that much. I think so. This is my other weakness: is I don't know what to do with myself when there's no work besides spending time with my girlfriend. We'll go to dinners, we'll take walks, we'll work out, things like that. But I don't know what else there is to do.
Right.
I'll sit down and I'll learn. I'll listen to podcasts. I try not to watch TV much. I like to play basketball once in a while. But I tell you that it's so important to make sure you have a social life and you have friends and you spend time with the people that you like a lot. In a rich and healthy life, something you're passionate about, family, hobbies, all of those things need to be addressed to have a really full circle, rich, fulfilling life. And right now, what I definitely have going for me is a mission that I'm working on, that I'm really passionate about. That's very important, but that takes up most of my life. And sometimes I'm a little too tired to do anything else.
I admire that about your work-life balance, though, is you've defined like what's important to you, and it seems like there's little room for margin. Like you don't watch TV, you know that the business is important to you, you know that relationships are important to you, and that seems like a really natural, successful mix of things to focus on. Let me tell you a little bit about a personal story. So I had a friend say, they're opening a Philz in Fullerton, there's a drive-through on that particular location. Are they going to have a drive-through? I said, no, Philz Coffee is it's not set up for a drive-through. You go in, it's going to take a while for you to get your cup of coffee. As you guys expand, do you see that model changing where it's a little bit more of a quick service closer to a Starbucks? Or is that kind of intimate experience where it takes a little bit of time important to the business model?
Well, it's funny you say that. At the core, Philz will be made by a person, one cup at a time, with love and passion. The thing to think about here, though, is the customer experience. And our mission is to better days and build communities. And like the cup, a great experience may look differently to one person, right? So somebody may value convenience over going in and waiting in line and, sitting in the beautiful gathering place, our stores, and just having a cup of coffee and some food and socializing with people. So I think you have to be empathetic, and you have to think about the customer experience. And as I said earlier, we love pushing barriers, challenging the status quo. So our core experience will, I want everybody to go in and experience Philz for the first time at that store and let the barista know it's their first time. But once in a while, if you value convenience, you have a mobile app where you can pre-order, prepay, and pick it up for convenience. In terms of the drive-through, we thought of it as an opportunity to think about how do we preserve and keep the quality and the service, but try this out, take this opportunity to try it out to see if we can make it work for, maybe the mom with multiple kids in the car and it being a hassle to get out of the car, but she might want her cup of Philz.
Right.
So it's all about serving the customer well, and how do we make drive-through personalized drive-through. So we are actually going to be testing something out at Fullerton that won't distract from what we do. So it might be a complete failure, by the way, or it might work out. We're not aiming for failure. We're aiming for success. But, I think everybody should go in the store and have the full experience, and because that's the magic.
I agree. Well, there's a couple of things I want to unpack there. Let's start with the first-time experience, which you've said before is very important to the success of Philz. Tell me a little bit about first-time experience just in business in general. How important is it?
I think the first-time experience matters a whole lot. The first experience holds a lot of weight to people's impression of you. At the same time, people are generally forgiving, which is good, and willing to give things a try if maybe the first time it wasn't great. But getting that first experience could mean the difference between somebody who doesn't like it to somebody who kind of likes it to somebody who loves it to somebody who's just becomes an enthusiastic ambassador and fan. Obviously, we're aiming for the latter, but and Philz is different. When you walk into Philz, it's totally different. You don't start at the cashier. You start at the barista. You talk to the person that's crafting your cup. There's a menu board. There's no lattes. Everything is handmade. And I guarantee, we can get the best cup for you, no matter if you like it dark, light, medium, sweet, not sweet, hot, iced. We can, there's over 4 million ways to enjoy Philz. So we can really personalize the cup for you. My favorite is the Tesora with honey and cream. I have 4 a day, and it's really good. So,
what size though, Jacob?
Small.
Okay, I was gonna say
4 smalls, but it's still a lot. It's
Yeah.
still a lot. That's like 48 ounces of coffee.
Yeah.
But coffee's good for you. You can drink, and the more you drink, sometimes the better.
Well, to your point, coffee is healthy for you, and Philz does a good job of using more natural ingredients. So things like honey and mint. And I assume those are a lot better for you than some of those other ingredients that other coffee shops are putting into their drinks. I want to get back to the drive-through because you said something that stood out to me, which is, hey, this drive-through idea might fail, but you guys are going to try it anyways. It just reminds me of kind of how failure is glorified in a sense in today's world. Like, hey, it's okay if you fail. Can you tell me a little bit about how failure impacts you as an entrepreneur?
I think when you have conviction, you have to give it a try and do your best to make it a success. But if it fails, use that failure as a learning experience, which you can then iterate on that idea to try it again, or you give up on it, but you keep the learning experience. So I look at failure as feedback.
This is the portion of the interview that I like to go into rapid fire mode. So I'm just going to ask you some questions as we get to the tail end of the interview here. You ready?
Sure.
Here's my first one. If you could write a postcard to anyone on the planet, past or present, so it could be an icon or a family member, who would you write it to and what would that postcard say?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. I don't know if that's going to be rapid fire. Let's see. So one of the my favorite books is Law of Success, written by Napoleon Hill. I think that book really, I got a lot from that. And I read it at the right age when I was in my high teens. I would write is, I'd like to have a cup of coffee with you and talk for a few hours.
What's one habit that you have, at night before you go to bed that helps set you up for success in the morning?
Oh, I learn. I watch interviews. On my iPad, I'll watch interviews. I'll, watch any clips that I find interesting that I can learn from. In any of the categories that are listed earlier, like science, philosophy, psychology, I'm really interested in those areas. So just I learn before I go to bed. I try to use that as learning time, and like I get a lot more out of watching than watching videos than reading. So it's a pretty entertaining night.
Let me ask you this one. If you could hit the easy button on anything in your life and just kind of skip past all the hard stuff you had to go through and just get to the moral of the story or that lesson learned, can you think of one thing you'd press the easy button on?
I don't know. I don't know that I would press the easy button on it. It's a hard one because then, it's just like people who win the lottery, they don't know what to do with it and they become depressed. But when you work hard for it and you earn it, you value it. So I get your question. I'll try to answer your question, but
I think that's a valuable answer though, Jacob. I mean, I think to your point, like you wouldn't because you learned lessons along the way and you think that's a valuable experience. So I'm going to accept that.
Okay. I would just add that probably learning how to have a more rich life beyond just like work. Yeah. I think that would be one.
All right. Here's the last question. What's one thing you haven't been able to share with the audience today that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
So I used to love basketball when I was growing up, and I used to play a lot of basketball, and I obsessed about it. And then I got really good at it. And I was like number one on the team in the district for a few years. But then I stopped after Michael Jordan retired.
Right.
And then I went into gaming, and I used to be obsessed with StarCraft and Diablo, those two games.
Mm-hmm.
And I got obsessed about it so much that I would play all the time, and then I got really good. I was like I was in the rankings for like some of the best in the country after like a lot of hours of playing. I would compete with people in Asia and other parts of the world, and then I stopped that because I gained a little weight sitting at the desk. I think Philz is that thing now.
So it sounds like the moral of that story is that it doesn't matter what you're doing. Do it well. If you're spending your time on anything, whether it's gaming, basketball, or running a successful business, try to be the best at it.
I agree. I agree with that.
Where can people keep up with you online real quick, and then we'll let you go?
Twitter, Instagram too. I don't use it as much. I don't use Twitter as much either. Mostly a viewer, but Twitter, Jacob Jaber, just my name. Instagram, the same thing. Yeah, those are probably the two good ones.
Cool. Jacob, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
You too. Take care, guys.
Hey guys, quick note before we leave. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Leaders. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a review. As we try to grow the show and invite more leaders to share their stories, every subscribe, rating, and review really helps expose the podcast to new ears. And a quick thank you to today's guest and our sound engineer, Jonathan Costco. Until next time, I'm James Fratzke.